when the 5 major oil companies testified before Congress earlier this week that none of the oil companies operating in the deep Gulf of Mexico have an adequate response plan. None of them have a contingency plan to deal with a catastrophic blowout. So the corporate irresponsibility extends far beyond BP to the entire petroleum industry. How on earth can you have an industry that is focused on extracting oil from deep in the ocean in the Gulf of Mexico, and not a single company has a plan drawn up to deal with the kind of catastrophic blowout that we're experiencing today? This justifies calls to stop all deep water drilling, because we simply do not have a plan by these giant oil companies. And I agree completely with Robert here that we've got a culture where corporations have been allowed to take over energy policy. The deregulation movement that was pushed by a large number of members of Congress who were doing those tough questions yesterday of BP's CEO Tony Hayward. You have to remember that whether we're talking about Wall Street, whether we're talking about big oil companies, it was radical elements in Congress that removed consumer protections and government oversight over these powerful industries, and these industries have been free to operate without concern to the safety of workers, without concern to the American economy, and without concern to the environment. And we need to undo this radical era of deregulation and understand that these powerful corporations are committing crimes and doing great harm against the people. And I wish that Barack Obama was taking more of a lead, because I think that he has been timid and he has been compromised by the fact that on March 31st, just a couple of weeks before this explosion and blowout, he called for a huge expansion of offshore oil drilling. Barack Obama made a political calculation that he needed the oil industry's support to further climate change legislation. And when Barack Obama called for that expansion of oil drilling, he never said that we needed to completely restructure the broken regulator. He never said we needed to rein in the power of the oil companies. And I think that has really compromised Barack Obama to be able to be a leader on this, because he doesn't have legitimacy because of his strong support for offshore drilling. A moratorium, by the way, that was imposed back in 1982 by the Republican president, Ronald Reagan.
And the relationship between BP and the Pentagon, Tyson Slocum?
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got a situation where BP has at least 6 outstanding contracts where taxpayers are paying more than $2 billion to BP to deliver fuel to the Pentagon, maybe mainly to the Air Force, for fuel deliveries. And we feel that this contract ought to be revoked. I don't think that revoking this contract is going to inhibit the ability of BP to pay what is owed to the people of the Gulf. This is $2 billion, which is a lot of money to taxpayers. But for a company that's got $235 billion in assets, they've got plenty of money to set aside to pay for the damage that it's caused. And I have a criticism of the White House's settlement of a $20 billion escrow account, because it's not enough. That is just the tip of the iceberg of the costs that are going to come to the loss of economic damage to fishermen, to tourism. And how on earth do we put a price tag on the permanent destruction of the Gulf of Mexico marine and coastal ecosystems? We're talking about permanent damage to one of the richest and most diverse marine life on the planet. And that damage was caused by negligence on the part of BP. So we need a lot more than $20 billion. And my concern is that BP is a global operation, and I feel I fear that BP America might try to shelter itself from the valuable assets outside of the United States by the parent company headquartered in London.
I'd like to bring back Robert Reich, and we've only got a couple of minutes before your feed goes down there. But I'd like to ask you about another issue, NAFTA. Many years ago, back in the early 90s, when you and other members of the Clinton administration were going around trying to convince the editorial boards of newspapers to back NAFTA, we had a spirited debate at the Daily News editorial board meeting over the issue. I'm wondering your assessment. Did Mexico benefit from NAFTA that the Clinton administration pushed, and in retrospect, what do you think was good or bad about the deal?
Juan, in retrospect, I think both sides, those who were very concerned about loss of jobs due to NAFTA in the United States, and also those in Mexico and also in the United States, such as the Clinton administration, who thought that NAFTA was the best thing since sliced bread. Both of those sides were proven wrong. Those jobs didn't go to Mexico. They went to China. But the one winner in NAFTA, and a big winner, was Mexico in terms of the peso crisis. I think that peso crisis, you may remember, in 1998, would have been much worse were it not for NAFTA. But let me just, I just want to wind back, because as you said, my feed is going to go in a second, and I want to say one more thing with regard to the Gulf, and that is that if we do not use this, and if the president doesn't use this as a teachable moment to put a price on carbon, I think he is missing a huge opportunity here. The American public is notoriously short on attention span, but this is going on and on and on. It's been, what, 60 days already, and there is no telling how long this is going to go. If there's a silver lining on this disaster, and I don't think there is, but if there is a silver lining here, it may be that right now is an opportunity to get the American people behind the idea of putting a price on carbon. And that means that what the president has got to do is maybe in conference committee, go to the, get this energy bill, whatever he can out of the Senate, in the conference committee between the House and the Senate, then put in a very specific provision to price and put a price on the carbon, on all carbon, not just oil, but on coal and all carbon fuels, and then use the lame duck session of Congress after the election to actually get this enacted.
Secretary Reich, Professor Reich, you're sitting at the University of California, Berkeley, where you're now a professor of public policy. It's interesting that you had this controversy at the university over the last few years about BP itself giving the University of California, Berkeley, $500 million. And that whole effort was headed up by, well, at the time, Stephen Chu, professor at Berkeley, now, of course, the energy secretary, who's heading up a lot of dealing with BP. What is the assessment now at your university, or your own assessment of this relationship that many were deeply concerned about the privatization of public education, and this being BP itself?
Amy, there's a question mark hanging over this. First of all, I hope that the university, and I don't have any information on this, but I hope the university has got BP to set up its own escrow account here for the University of California, because BP may be in trouble. As your other guest was saying, $20 billion is not going to go nearly far enough. There are going to be a lot of civil complaints and a lot of litigation. It may be that BP starts, it has to pay out hundreds of billions of dollars over the next couple of years. If Berkeley is going to get anything out of BP, it's got to move very quickly and get an escrow fund. And number two, the administration here has reassured the faculty, and the faculty was not unanimously in favor of this by any means, but the administration has reassured the faculty that there is an iron curtain between academic freedom and what BP wants out of the university. Well, we will see.
Well, Robert Reich, I want to thank you very much for being with us, Professor of Public Policy at the University of California, Berkeley, was Secretary of Labor during the Clinton administration. And Tyson Slocum, a last question, and that is the issue of the hundreds of wells that BP continues to operate in the Gulf of Mexico, as the CEO told Elliot Engel of New York and a number of the congressmen who asked him, among them Atlantis, which dwarfs the Deepwater Horizon, with many complaints with whistleblowers speaking out about the dangers of Atlantis. Looks like we lost Tyson Slocum, but we'll take that up next week. We are going to go to a break, and then when we come back, we're going to look at not only President Obama's longest war, the war in Afghanistan, but the longest war in the United States. We'll be speaking with Tom Engelhardt. Stay with us.